Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being on our program today. We have a wonderful, wonderful guest, someone from University of California, Berkeley. And it's a very interesting campus. If you've never hanged out there, it's really exciting, especially when I visited in the 70s. I remember that experience. And today we have an author. He's also a professor, Ph.D. up there, but we're going to focus on his book. And you may have seen it. What a beautiful cover on it. And the idea is that it focuses on dreamers. The name of the book is Diary of a Reluctant Dreamer. And the author himself is here with us today, Dr. Alberto Ledesma. Dr. Ledesma, thank you for being here in our program today.
Sure, I'm really happy. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words about this little book that I wrote.
You know, first of all, give us a little bit of your background, which will sort of tie in with us and help our viewers understand your relationship with the book.
So I'm a kid that was born in Jalisco, Mexico, in a little town in northern Jalisco. And my dad, like so many dads in Mexico, particularly in the Jalisco area, ended up, coming to the U.S. as a bracero. And after a while living here undocumented status, and so he brought us up. So I'm a undocumented immigrant kid who grew up in East Oakland, came in the early 1970s, and so I wrote this little book about how a kid from an undocumented immigrant family went on to become a professor and an administrator. What was that experience like, going from being undocumented to now being at the university, and with all these issues around immigration, taking place.
So let us sort of get ahead of the story. So the story is about you.
It's a memoir. It's kind of a hybrid book. It's unique. It's a biography that I've written in essay form, but it is illustrated via vignettes. I have typically one page illustrations that capture different dimensions of what it means to be undocumented. The book also has a section called the Undocumented Alphabet, which is, going from A to Z, and it looks at different components of what it means to be undocumented. This is also an area where I did my research. So part of what I'm trying to do is take a lot of my own academic preparation in the area and share it, particularly with folks who might not have that privilege that I have. The poster, I guess, just came down. So yeah, sorry about that.
I just happened to notice that behind you is one of your books. Could you show us the cover of that book? Because I was extremely impressed when I saw that.
So this is the cover. So
Yes.
One thing to say about the book is that I did all of the work, including the illustrations. And
That's your artwork?
That is my artwork.
Wow. Could you show us another page somewhere?
So I'm trying to go to pages that have what we call the full bleeds or the full spread. So here's one that has it's a movement. This is an image I call The Reluctant Dreamer, which focuses on undocumented immigrant kids who, get caught up in this undocumented immigrant activism, but they didn't really find out they were undocumented immigrants. They found out less than a few months, or sometimes maybe a year before they have to take action. And here they are now having to embrace this identity who they didn't think was their own. And so I write about that. I also use a lot of the art that, like this is a Diego Rivera piece that I redid it, updating it to the current immigrant issue, the conflict at the border. This is one of the details from a mural he did on the revolution, and a confrontation between the revolutionary families and the federales, but here I updated it with the border guard.
As we want to continue talking more about your book, first of all, we want to let our listeners know, where can they get a hold of your book, please?
So I would strongly suggest if you're interested in my book that you go to the University of Ohio Press website. That would be the preferred place to go get it, because then the press that helped me with the book will get those resources, and also it's better for them to track how well the book is doing. But of course, you can get it pretty much in any bookstore, online bookstore, Amazon primarily. I've seen it in like the Walmart bookstore. Pretty much the only place I haven't seen it is in Costco. So,
well, we hope you see it there as well. When you did the book, who were you targeting with your book?
Yeah, so my primary targets were the kids. Were undocumented immigrant kids who have been under constant attack for the last, God knows how many years. One of the things, I was undocumented from 74 to 86, but that experience changed me forever. And it gave me a different perspective. And so I've always done research in this area because, I experienced a kind of American travail that I couldn't really talk about. When you're undocumented, you have really no ability to talk about it and feel safe. And so there was a lot of observations that came from that. There was a kind of double consciousness that emerged, but there wasn't really a venue for me to articulate this double consciousness. And so what I'm trying to do is to chronicle what that experience was like, because I know all these millions of undocumented youths who are going through this psychic trauma in the midst that they're still, trying to survive day to day, and the issue is being debated publicly without their voice being heard. And not that my book really represents their voice. It doesn't. It's very particular. That's the reason I wrote it as a memoir. It's very much my perspective. But what I want to do is I want to at least give some voice, to that other side, and give them something that can be healing, given the very vicious and very mean-spirited ways that their experiences are being discussed publicly.
So let me see if I understood. In a way, what seems is that instead of just sort of embracing your emotions, stress, fear, unknown, questioning, it sounds to me like you put your thoughts and feelings into a book, into a piece of paper.
Yes.
And what we're seeing now is the accumulation of those experiences that you were living throughout your lifetime.
Yes, I mean, I've as a Berkeley student, both undergraduate and graduate student, I had the privilege of working with amazing scholars and artists. And one of the things that I learned from them is that, if there's something you're trying to sort out and it's part of a collective experience, that one of the best ways to analyze it and to kind of work through it is by writing about it, by drawing it, by trying to externalize it and sharing it with others, and see how in dialogue, there can be, some greater understanding that we can develop. I took a number of classes from one of the authors that I consider a role model, and a mentor, is Sheri Moraga, and her book, Loving in the Warriors, which, where she reflected on her own experience, as, queer Latina, growing up in her family and growing up in a movement, also in a larger movement, how there was a kind of personal militancy that you had to develop to claim that identity and to make sure that that kind of collective vergüenza around it, that you didn't replicate it. And so that's one of the things that I try to do with having been undocumented. There were 3 million people that went through Ronald Reagan's amnesty. Of those 3 million people, 40% of them ended up becoming citizens. And so what happens to the stories of the 3 million, the 40% of these new Americans? Where are these stories? And we really haven't seen too many of them. And a big part of it is that even though this large population ended up becoming American citizens, that legacy of vergüenza around having been undocumented, wasn't erased. And so part of what I wanted to do was to, present work that shows that being undocumented is a kind of American heritage also. And that, when we replicate, or when we validate that this is taboo, that this is something to be embarrassed about, then that oppression or that taking away the voice from this community is once again reasserted. And my book, I'm trying to counter that a little bit, to try to provide, some healing, given all the ugliness of the debate.
I applaud your work, and I'm also learning the process, like you said, the healing process, that this is one of the areas. And another thing that I saw in your book is not only in your book and talking to you, was the idea that the book itself raises a consciousness to kids and people that read your book. But on top of that, it also calls to action individuals who want to also write their own memoirs, whether it be through written form or picture format.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I write about is how, illustration is a kind of therapy that is available to anyone. I mean, I started as a little kid drawing stick figures, about my experience, but doing that allowed me to better understand and come to terms with, the different dimensions of the experience. And so as I practiced, I was able to add more detail. And in adding that detail, that gave me a language by which to speak about having been undocumented with my family and with others. And I've gone around and I work with students here at Berkeley. I work with students in elementary schools, in middle schools, where we've used illustration to talk about those things that we can't name. So if we can't name them, we can draw them sometimes. And in drawing them, we reduce their power. We capture or we circumscribe their power. Not only that, but in particularly the comic book form. I study narrative and I study the mechanics of narrative. When you try to do novels, when you try to do essays, when you try to do memoir, there are very strict rules that you have to follow. And publishing really is made available to people who do a good job following those rules. The comic book format is very, very flexible. And so you can have different kinds of narrative in the same, illustration. You can have omniscient narrator, you can have first-person narrator, you can have somebody who breaks that wall all at the same time without disrupting the experience of the reader or the viewer. But when you do a story, you do that and your work doesn't get published.
I want to thank and acknowledge a lot of the illustrators and comic developers who I've interviewed in the past, who helped me begin to understand the power of giving this tool to do illustration and comics to kids. And obviously, one of the persons that sort of oriented me in that direction is Dr. Frederick Luis Aldama at University of Ohio. Talking to all of them gave me an insight how valuable this tool is. If teachers brought it into the classroom and told the kids, we're going to work through illustrations and artwork to get the point across, and it can transfer over to biology, social studies, and philosophy classes if need be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of educational theory focuses on this idea of multiple intelligences. And so one of the things about, visual texts is that you can, if visual literacy is something you're more comfortable with, then you can develop that and you can actually empower yourself with it. There's a reason why, like during the Mexican Revolution, for example, one of the ways that the Mexican governments used in order to educate the population was through murals. And that's because, you had large populations that hadn't, they hadn't developed kind of textual literacy as a matter of policy and really, the idea of sharing some sense of Mexicanidad came by drawing, what Diego Rivera was Siqueiros, what all these artists did on the walls of the city, right? You had revolutionaries coming through the city and learning their history as doing these different walls.
Well, I understand also that, even the church used the idea of using the Catholic Church, using all its artwork back to centuries in order to have this information being transmitted over to people and teach them the Bible.
Right.
So we're still using something, but it still never is going to go away. We still use it.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact is that today we're actually more of a visual culture than ever. If you look at the way that technology has made, I mean, Instagram, for example, even things like Facebook, Twitter, an idea that's communicated through one image, a very complex idea, sometimes happens much more efficiently than, the essay long form is a dying art, actually. So, I mean, all those things I take into consideration. And the book wasn't planned that way, really. It happened more by accident. I had been doing the illustrations just to help kids out, and next thing you know, I had teachers and I had friends who said, this should be a book, and I had an opportunity. Actually, Dr. Aldama at Ohio State, developed a press and said, hey, what about doing a book? Can you put a proposal together? I did, and next thing you know, we have this little book out.
That's wonderful. So once again, your view for this particular book, hopefully there'll be more, is specifically to youth who are undocumented, who sort of have a platform where they can sort of start looking into themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's meant to be evocative. It's meant to be a resource, primarily for youth who are going through this trauma. But it's also meant to be a tool for allies, for populations who are interested in the subject and who want to kind of get up to speed a little quicker. It's very personalized. So I mean, this book is about me. So, you get to learn a lot about my family, a lot of my, key experiences that I've had that shaped my identity. But through that process, you also get to learn what was IRCA, what does liminality as a concept mean? What does it mean to be hyper documented? All of these terms that are part of understanding the undocumented youth today, you will get introduced to, and by application with my own experience, you're going to get to learn a little bit more about them.
Wonderful. Again, could you tell us, share with us where our viewers can find your book?
So again, primarily, the Ohio State University Press, that's where I would invite you all to go. And, they have a new series that is called Mad Creek Books. It's an imprint of the Ohio State University Press. That's where I would invite you all primarily to go. And it's really easy, to use their website and to get the book. For those who have Amazon or Amazon Prime, that's another way to do it. And, I understand some people think that it's more convenient. So whoever, whatever floats your boat, right? But generally, pretty much any online store would have it. It's taking a little longer to get to the brick and mortar stores. Part of it is because this is, a very small run that they're doing starting off, and we'll see where it's at. In a year or so, or if it does well enough, then I imagine there might be another print run done.
Well, in closing the show, first of all, I want to congratulate you on your work. We also want to provide, if available, contact information where persons can contact you through this show or through other means to be able to contact you and give you a moment for closing statements. And I want to once again thank you and reiterate to our viewers that we're interviewing Dr. Alberto Ledesma from the University of California campus, Berkeley, who is the author and illustrator of the Diary of the Reluctant Dreamer. Very exciting book. Again, you'll see the title. Can you put the title up again, please, one more time so that we can
Here it goes.
Appreciate it. There you go. And, that's wonderful. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, I'd like to give you a platform for your closing statements.
The only thing I want to say is thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share a little perspective on this book. Thank your audience, for caring about this issue. And you know, more than anything else, you know, it's a difficult time right now out there for a lot of young people, not just young people, their families also. One of the things that I try to get across in the book that is very important is, you know, to problematize this idea of the dreamer. You know, oftentimes the dreamer is presented as this kind of model minority figure. And my purpose in the book is to show that if there is a dreamer, it's not just one, it's the whole family that is a dreamer. And there's, you know, oftentimes the idea of the dreamer or the archetype of the dreamer is used in order to criminalize the parents and to blame them for their awful situation. But if there's anything to blame, it's an economic arrangement where jobs are made available to vulnerable populations, and they're you know, jobs that are designed just for them in exchange for them forfeiting all kinds of rights and forfeiting all kinds of, you know, abilities to really have their perspectives heard. And that's, I go into that a little bit, but you know, the reason I call it Reluctant Dreamer is that it's not, you know, I do believe in MLK's, Martin Luther King's idea of the dream, that we should aspire to something great. But it's not just, you know, these exceptional young people that we're talking about. We're talking about families who are all fighting, you know, for a better life. And, you know, I'm not, you know, we shouldn't pit one family member against another in order to prop one up. It's a more complicated story than that. And that's what I try to capture.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We've been talking to Dr. Alberto Ledesma, author and illustrator, Diary of a Reluctant Dreamer. I hope you get the book as well. Ohio University Press, and that people find it, read it, appreciate it, and also use it as a platform to motivate others to also write their stories. It doesn't have to be an award-winning book. It doesn't have to be wonderful illustration, the Siqueiros or Rivera, but it's the idea that it presents an outlet for psychological healing, and we prevent scarring as much as we can in the psychological side. I'm Armando F. Sanchez. I'm the CEO and producer of this program, Armando F. Sanchez Production. Please contact me at afsanchez66@gmail.com if you have any questions and you have any notes or messages to send forward to Dr. Ledesma. Send them forward to me and I'll make sure he receives them as well. Thank you very much. I wish you continuous success. I look forward to having you on future shows and continuing this dialogue. And hopefully I want to also hopefully have in the future Dr. Frederick Luis Aldama from Ohio State to join us on one of our shows, and we continue this dialogue of how to use illustrations, cartooning to get a message across and help the kids and families find resolution to the stress that they're going through.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
Igualmente. Adios. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. Again, I'm Armando F. Sanchez. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next show. Adios.